Okay, today I will be talking mostly about photography. As the common saying usually is, a picture is worth 1,000 words. If any of you remember your mother smashing a camera in your face, telling you to pose this way or that way because she wants you to look so cute in those photo albums. I've actually been doing that for 5 years. I usually shove my camera in people's faces. I've gotten pretty far with it. So today I will be talking about the history of photography and cameras, as well as where cameras are today and as well as where film is as far as film photography. So as I mentioned in my first main point, I will be talking a brief history of photography. The first actual print was made in 1827 in France by Joseph Niepius. It actually required 8 hours of sunlight to develop, and it lasted around 30 seconds. At the same time, though, there's another Frenchman named Louis Daguerre. It took him actually 12 years to actually take exposure time down to 30 minutes, but the print actually lasted quite a longer amount of time, I guess I should say. These two men actually worked together to continue to develop photography as well as film in development time. When they both died, their sons made a booklet of the process, and when Louis Daguerre actually developed this, he named it after himself, which is where we get the term daguerreotypes, which is the actually first film picture. But those are actually on plates. They weren't, rolled film didn't actually come about until 1889 by a gentleman named George Eastman. Between 1851 and 1880s, there was wet negatives, which the best example I can think of is in the Aristocats towards the end of the movie when they're getting their family picture and the guy had the huge long thing. That was a mobile darkroom because these wet negatives had to be developed immediately or else the picture wouldn't stay because of the silver gelatin that they used to keep the prints on the plates, I should say. But in the 1880s, a dry plate was created, which just used a gelatin, which kept the picture on there, which actually developed the first portable camera. Between 1950 and 1986 is where we see more of the cameras that we see today. In the 1950s, they developed the 35 millimeter, which is actually what this one is. And then we get Polaroid cameras around 1984, and then not until 1986 do we start getting cameras like this, the digital cameras. They were actually first created by Canon, but Kodak was actually the one who made the first Nikon FS3s, which is the more professional cameras. Digital cameras actually came to be from the U.S. used them as spy satellites, and the first digital image was actually just a freeze frame from a film camera. In 1986, Kodak made the first megapixels, which is what we see in our cameras today. They actually produced the first 5x7 print as well. In 1990, Kodak paired with Microsoft to make, I guess you could say, the first copy of Photoshop. It was a photo editing system. And then in 1991, Kodak started making the first Nikon cameras. And then at this point, I guess I'll talk a little bit about cameras. This is a Vivitar 35 millimeter film camera. With this, you get about 36 pictures if you're lucky. You also have to roll the film within the back, so you actually lose some because you cannot expose it at all. Well, except for right now. I got really excited because I found this in my bag. But this right here would be exposed. But in the darkroom, when you're taking this out of the canister, you actually have to pry this open. And you have to do that completely in the dark within actually a container as well. So it takes a little bit to do, and you have to practice a lot. And like I said, kind of have to sacrifice some of your images for that. Whereas with this camera, with my memory card, I get about 535 pictures, and I can do anything I want. I can mess around more with it. And with this camera, I have 3 different lenses that I use. So I guess the pros and cons with digital. Obviously with digital, you get instant pictures. You can fix the apertures and the f-stops as soon as you want and mess with it, whereas this, you have to know what you need to do, and you kind of have to know your way around a dark room. But learning with a film camera first before you go into digital is actually beneficial. I've been working with this camera for 5 years now, and I actually have learned more for this camera using this camera for 2 years than I have in the previous years. So I actually prefer film, even though this cost about $6 a roll of film, and the paper that you use usually costs around $15, and you get 100 sheets. And that doesn't actually, and you have, for me, when I do my stuff, I usually have to go through 2 packages of paper to get what I want. But with my last point, I will be talking more about digital and how film is actually becoming more popular again after, in the early 90s, how it started dying out with the creation of the digital cameras. I went on to topyaps.com, and they had an article on there about the top camera companies in the world, or camera brands, I should say. I was going to do top 10, but I don't think you all wanted to hear me ramble off camera names that I don't think many of you care to know about. So I did the top 5, Olympus, Fujifilm, Sony, Nikon, and Canon. And then,
Pentax.
Pentax was like number 6 or 7, I think. So then I was like, and Japan has been very proactive when it comes to cameras. So I was like, I'm going to highlight all these and see which ones are Japanese. 7 out of the 10 were Japanese made. Vivitar is American. Yes, awesome. Unfortunately, Japanese. But most of the cameras you see, Samsung, Philips, and Vivitar were the only 3 that were not Japanese made. So Japan is kicking our butts when it comes to cameras, unfortunately. But speaking of film, there's actually 2 companies based in America. One is called Lomography and the Impossible Project. And these 2 companies are actually bringing back film photography. Lomography, they sell cameras starting around $50, and it's a basic 35mm camera. And they actually will send you film, and they will send you different lenses with these cameras. They have like a fisheye lens, or they even have filters for your cameras. And then the Impossible Project is, they started when Polaroid started going out of business around 2009. They were going to cease production of all of this, and a group of people kind of got upset about that. So they decided to take over, and so they bought some of the equipment that the Polaroid used, and then they actually hired on some of the Polaroid engineers. And so from 2009, they've been selling various instant film. If you still have a Polaroid camera, you can get the paper that you need, or I should say, yeah, the paper that you need for it. As well as they have starter kits on there that come with the camera and the paper for about $129. So I hope you guys have been as interested with photography as I have, and I hope that you guys at least try and pick up a camera and have a lot of fun with it like I have. Thank you.